welcome to the 4 Checks cast, or this week it's going to be a 3 Checks cast with Justin is out at ComicCon. First show in a couple of weeks because last week some of us had traveled to Louisville on Thursday night. Next week we're going to have a couple of us at Gen Con, so a little in-between show, and I'm here with Kevin Broberg and Will Godby. Hi guys, how you doing?
Doing
Yeah,
all
that's
right.
me. I'm doing good. I just took a nap. I woke up.
Bro, same. That's what took me so long to get back on.
Yeah, naps are pretty good. So, kind of an obvious topic for this week. We just had the largest regional of the year in Louisville. 177 players showed up, and nothing for it but to kind of recap a bit. Do we want to just kind of not get too long into our personal stories of the weekend, but just individual results? I'll speak on Justin's behalf. He was Swiss champ. He came into the weekend with his damage reduction Hanj 1 and ran the table with it in Swiss. Lost, I believe, ultimately in top 8 to Gavin Kale's Porco. But yeah, that deck is as good as he advertised, for sure.
Yeah, I think Justin, correctly, the first layer of the narrative of the weekend was we had the Hanji backup decks, the 9 Titans from throughout the ages showing up in tremendous force. And Justin's deck was tuned to bully kind of the big picture with Hanji like everyone else, and then tuned his deck to prey on other Hanji decks with the main deck filled with outs, with the full set of activate the coordinate to blow up the backups. Anyway, I played Peak Universus, Peak Finger, and played Death mid range. Not aggro, just Death mid range. Mid range is mid range hits.
Yeah.
A little bit sort of simultaneously like bigger, more controlling, so to speak. Than some of the other lists. I had some female Titans that were really cool, but not above getting my hands dirty. And I managed to go 6-3 on the weekend overall, falling ultimately to Zach's Earth Godzilla with Unyielding Destruction, and where I managed to make a game of it. I was feeling pretty hopeless about the matchup, but I had 3 competitive games on the backup top 16 stream, and it was fun watching the commentators pop off when I was I took some game action, let's say, and
Yeah.
made it exciting down the stretch.
Yeah. Will, what did you bring this weekend?
So I had brought 2 decks. I brought Annie 2 and I brought Porco. I ended up going with Porco because of the whole Marley's Warriors thing. I just didn't want to go through the effort because at the time I was told that I would need 3 physical deck lists and then to edit my deck on UGN. And I'd only brought 4 blank deck lists with me to fill out, and my local wanted to also play Annie, so I was like, I have a backup, you don't. I'll just play Porco, you play Annie. And I got abysmal matchups. I got paired into the Zeke one that made top cuts round 1. I got paired into Justin Martin, and he got me in the sideboard matchups real bad. And then the other match, I lost 2 more, but they were against mirror match aggros, and I just lost the die roll. You know how it can be.
Yeah.
I ended up going 4-4, which is not terrible, but it's not great. It's whatever.
Yeah, it was like respectable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for my part, I played my Knot deck, the same one that I brought down to Jacksonville for the Stark Dark. Wound up going 5-1 and 2. Faced 3 Hanj decks, went 1-1 and 1 against those. I lost to Justin, beat a Hanj, and drew against a Hanj. And I had another draw against the Ross Aubrey's Pumat. 5-1-2 was good enough for 17th place. Unfortunately, could not get any of those final round win-ins to just kind of draw on their own and let me in the door. So we settled for 17th, and then kind of hung out on Sunday and tried to get some board games going and things like that.
Fair. Also, to answer the question in the chat, it wasn't necessarily a planned thing. It was pointed out to UVS Games that Marley's Warriors was not working for the Chaos Death characters like a few days beforehand when they had already been told that it had been fixed. And it was brought up to the TOs the day before the event. That was the solution I was given, but apparently enough people came up with the problem that they just kind of nixed the whole physical deck list thing. The fix they ended up doing was just trade out Marley's Warriors in your deck list on UGN with a a card that is very obviously not supposed to be there, something like Scream, like a blank zero diff, that you could easily point out and be like, hey, this is supposed to be Marley's Warriors. Um, that is just what I was told initially, but I think it was just because I had the physical deck list on me, and they're like, yeah, give us 3. One for tournament organizers, one for head judge, and one for one for tournament organizers and head judge, one for the commentary, and then one to show it to your opponent.
Oh, I see.
So
yeah.
Yeah, we gotta figure out some kind of better pipeline for some of this stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah,
especially when Turtles has double symbol cards coming too.
Yeah, Cardi's been very hit and miss, right? They're good in terms of they get them to develop new things on a pretty regular basis, like the judge program, like the rankings page that came together, at some point not actually that long ago. But getting bugs fixed has been a bit more of a struggle.
Right.
So hopefully that improves in the future. It's easy for us to sit here and say like, well, just change software, but that is quite an endeavor, right? When you have hundreds of stores out there using this thing, and they know how to use it, all their events are in it, and all of that. So hopefully they get that sorted out. On the coverage side, we had a couple cool things develop from a coverage perspective. The stream, I believe, for Swiss, instead of doing it live, they sort of did a stagger where they recorded one round in advance, and then each round they would sort of play back the matches from prior round. Either, I haven't deduced exactly what they were doing, but it looked like they either picked the better match or just showed both matches and maybe skipped over some parts, and that let them do some neat things like some pre-match deck previews and things like that.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, all of the deck list headaches, I see the bones of how we're trying to make a viewer experience that's actually legible, and try to tell them here are some cards you can expect, and have that kind of go in depth like that. And if you have that where the only people who are getting their deck lists disclosed on the internet are the people who are on the computer match, that's actually a pretty imbalanced playing environment.
Right.
And so that almost justifies all the backlifts we have to do to here's my phone, or here's let's get signed in to UGN and scroll through the players or whatever to look at the deck that's there. And I think that's an absolutely worthy cause. I think the player experience at home to a certain extent is more important than the player experience of us in the venue, for the health of the game.
Right.
Although obviously we need people to show up. But,
right. Obviously, as long as at the end of the day we still have a successful tournament and everyone has a good time, that's what's important for us. The viewer experience is very important as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to get. I haven't carved out the time of my week yet to go back and watch all of the matches. I just caught I guess actually the latter half of my feature match where they cut me off right before it was about to get exciting, and so
yeah. Did they do the top cuts live, or did they kind of?
I think they ran Top Cuts live, and then they had a second, a backup feature match that they could switch to, or they could switch to the recording of.
Okay.
There was actually, I remember there was a bunch of tearing around as they tried to move to the correct position in game 3 in the VOD.
It's like, all right, rewind. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really cool. It's a nice iteration on the coverage, especially in terms of reducing downtime. And frankly, if you do have a match at the tables that just has a lot of dead time in it, you can either skip over those portions or not show that game or what have you, and sort of figure it out as you go, so that your stream audience has a good experience trying to watch all day.
Right.
Yeah, and I was I was talking to Sam some of the event, and he was really kind of focused in and interested in kind of the amount of be right back time in the stream, in this stream.
Oh, right.
And I kind of realized oh yeah, that's a good choice of a key performance indicator, right? Of how much just dead air do you have that's gonna make people get up and go make a sandwich or whatever, just turn the stream off or start doing something else, versus being able to keep them engaged and keep them on the stream and engaged with the game.
Yeah, especially since some rounds, you'll have some time extensions, you'll have things like that going out on some slowness in between rounds. That just adds to that. You might say oh well, we're just going to have this BRB screen up for 15 minutes while this round ends, and then it turns into 25 minutes. And sort of having something that you can just keep working through your backlog as you go. So long as the commentators themselves keep their stamina up, at least, I don't know really how it was for them because I believe Tam was kind of managing it the whole time, and then Barrett and Sam were full time yapping on there.
Yeah, it was really lucky. You had 2 hosts and 1 producer this weekend from the 3-man team.
Yeah, so hopefully the people that had to stay at home and watch the coverage enjoyed that. The other cool thing that came out of this, not even specific to this event, but for all events this year, is that Calidus Orsis, in chat and in the discords, did some crunching with the UGN. The UGN has a publicly accessible API that may or may not be on purpose, but he likes to mine that for data and stuff. And there's a couple other people that work with it, and he came up with this Metaversus UVS Ultra account and made a folder for all of the 2025 regionals so far. We have Denver, Chelmsford, Albuquerque, Melbourne, and this last one in Louisville. And so not only did he get every single deck imported here, all of the placings 1 through 177, except for a couple people whose deck list got bugged. But when you go into one of those, and we'll grab Justin, I guess, who formally finished. Where is he? 5th? Yeah, there we go. You can see, the overall stats of the event, how many players were in it, how many rounds there were, how this particular deck did, and all of its matchups, including its top cuts. And these are all clickable links too, right? We can, click on here if we want to see Rivers Pony and how they did. Ben's on here, Mitch Cimino, a Deku that also made top cuts. The ultimate winner, congratulations, of course, to Calvin Hauergel Wub with this Zeke Yeager Warchief deck, playing a much more respectable attack count than some of the other backup decks we saw this weekend. And yeah, so the links in that's shared in various discords. We'll try to get it on the eventual YouTube upload of this. I guess we can just paste it in the chat right now, right? We can do that for people that want to check that out. And I'm not sure if UVS Ultra lets you search for an account to find it, but it is named Metaversus. And this is a really cool thing to have to go look at events. And even, this helps you see past the top 16, get a nice glance at what the top 32 looked like. I mean, here's all the Rodons we didn't see in top 8 just stacked up here, 22 through 24.
Right.
We had, even more Hanges. And, just gives us an overall view of the event that we haven't quite had before.
Yeah, this has been. I know I've gone through and dug up. I remember in Albuquerque, I was digging through the 9th through 16th place deck lists because there were a couple of really cool 7-hand size decks and various permutations of aggro and control down there that I knew about and was like, oh, this is a cool deck that I wanted to kind of mine for inspiration or content or whatever. And here, yeah, this is so much more information, so much more data than we've ever had in easily digestible format, right? You can go back and say, oh yeah, who did this guy lose to, who missed top cuts on by the, and, they had a win and in. Oh, that's cool, but what they play against, and then it's 16 clicks, and then it's 16 more clicks to find out what their who they play against, who else they beat. And here it's organized and used, which is just incredible.
Okay, I think I have addressed an echo that we've had all show. I hope if everyone else has turned silent, chat, please yell at me. It's like a very tightly tuned echo, so it almost just sounds like normal mics. But I just picked up that is in fact an echo, and I should probably do something about it.
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk Pink Universus, guys.
Yeah.
Speaking of Wub's deck, this has been my favorite thing of this tournament is just these narratives about the Titans, right? We've had, to an extent, I mean, I guess I have won a couple of these regionals with, we had the Smiling Titan metagame in AOT 1, and then overcome by humanity's strongest gambler in Irwin. I became the Titan for Worlds with the Hanji deck and all these Titan attacks and Vortex and everything. And now we have the Titan Scientist metagame with the 9 times throughout the ages and Zeke Warchief and Hanji 1. And we have the least mirror match I've ever seen. Right? It's the most aggressive iteration of the Warchief deck playing against the Shield Big Bang wall deck, honestly. with Wub, and it's such a great storyline.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of fun flavor for you as an AOT enjoyer. From my perspective at least, not really engaging in all that stuff. The very clear theme was backup theme decks, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be Hanj or Zeke, and even going down into the top 32, those decks just continue to show up. It's not just like a splash of what was in the top cut. I think the worst performing Hanj or Zeeks were 4 and 4.
That's crazy.
Like there's one that went like 1/1 drop and just like left after round 2 when they didn't have to. But like if you scroll through the Metaversus, the worst ones are 4/4, I think, which is indicative of how well they did. I think overall they probably had like a 70% win rate collectively. These backup theme decks, and they have different shapes within them, as Kevin was talking about. You can be leveraging Harness Undeath, you can be leveraging Falling Titans, you can be doing Unyielding Destruction things to reset people, you could be doing any mix of those things, you could be doing Titan pile kills with 9 Titans throughout the ages, doubling it. And so we saw all of those strategies present. You had more damage reduction focused Hanj lists, you had Zeeks that were just using giant check bonuses to try to help pass blocks. I think we even had a couple like Colossus Confrontation lines in there where you could do sort of the old Mimic thing and get a one-sided reset that way. And so there's all sorts of different stuff within this, but the broad space is, UVS, especially the last couple AOT sets, and to some extent Critical Role, has been trying to push backups and make it more of a thing. And it's working.
Well, thank you for the 5 gifted subs, anonymous benefactor.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow, thank you.
Let's go. Yeah, and I want to highlight too, the most surprising deck to me was the Sep 2 Zeke,
Right.
Zeke Jaeger, that was playing. I know there were a number of different ones of these, but some of them were siding into Hanji as they're the same tune symbols, obviously the same backup stuff, but kind of one of the most lopsided shaped decks we've seen. It's like as many as 30 backups and a tiny attack count on the theory of we're gonna build a million backups, draw a million cards on turn 2, and then transform and be able to turn a hand of 1 attack, 4 backups into 5 attacks with a very high likelihood of checking 5s and 6s on it all, and just completely pop off. Certainly not the most not the most Pink Universus necessarily in terms of
it has a plan and it's going to execute its plan and hopefully it works
at your opponent.
Yeah,
but very different, very novel deck ideas. And
I think there were 2 of those. There was another one of those in top 32 as well. There were a couple of those set 2 Zeeks running around.
Yeah, just an incredible range of incredible diversity amongst these decks. And it's easy to say that everyone just played the broken ones, but even within the the narrow space of these backup decks, the Universus design team did make enough trade-offs and balancing acts that different people could see it in different ways. And maybe even if the metagame wasn't prepared for it and they ran over at least half of the field just on the pure strength of Rock Throw 9 Titan stuff. I mean, clearly there were more net successful instances of that. There were more or less net successful instances of their opponents, how they could react to it.
Yeah, and it's hard to say because we always just get these one events in a vacuum. I think at one point Jeremy or somebody asked, if we ran back this event, what do you think would happen? I think my answer was like, the people that weren't hating on backup stuff, which I don't think there were. I felt like most of the players that were paying attention kind of knew that was coming, but maybe I'm wrong on that. But I felt like both. You'd have more hate pack, but you'd also have more people running the decks. And, obviously, the people who were working on these decks are trying to prepare for the hate already anyway, right? And trying to make sure that they can win those matchups. So I felt like the net would you probably have a similar population in top cuts, so it might be a smaller percentage of the people playing the decks, but they'd still overall be the dominant force.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely was kind of peddling the kind of what if scenarios. If we had another one of these next week, or if we there's kind of the counterfactual. If we ran this again, if we just shook the arm and went back in time and said, well, everyone gets another chance to, knowing what they knew, to change their mind, or to, if someone was 50-50, they might land on the other side of the coin the next time. And then there's the other hypothetical of, if we ran another tournament next weekend and people had time to adjust,
Right.
where would they go from here? Certainly, I mean, one of the storylines from the weekend is that Jamie didn't show up. I think a lot of people were excited about him, and this was clearly not the field for him, or clearly not the field for people who prepared him in the way that everyone was.
Right.
I don't know. I think definitely there's. I know I put in one copy of Signal Shot into my peak deck as kind of a last second a call to say, well, hey, this is a good value attack to slap some backups that I can let me play the game if I get my stage beaten up a little bit. People aren't necessarily holding their mid blocks. That we're not. Yeah. And even beyond the obvious like cards that say the word backup in a all rival backups lose to
Right.
stamina type sense, there's plenty of ways to interact with them more or less favorably. There's plenty of devastating losses as well as violent animus shots out there that people could be playing that I don't think I saw any devastating loss.
Yeah, I think devastating loss is the biggest absence in terms of, because people were buying up activating the coordinates before the event, right? And people, obviously, anyone who could play animus shot was playing some number of animus shot. Right. But devastating loss is the one that we probably could have seen a lot more of that wasn't there. That works in ways that attacking Titans, attacking the backups does not always, work the way you might imagine it's going to.
Yeah, with Hanji 1, obviously you can't attack the 9 Titans at all, but you can devastating loss it. And yeah, like for instance, the kind of the Zeke decks, the War Chief decks, I should say, on the front side, if you try to attack a backup, he can just drop your attack after 1 enhance by deleting it, and that's I don't think there were two. I guess the death symbol decks. We didn't see much success from like TC's really funny Death Rattle Hanji. We saw, I guess, a middling result. I think he had like 3 draws and 1 or
Right.
1 or 2 losses in 8 rounds, which is kind of mildly successful. Not the worst record, but you hope to not have 3 draws in a tournament. But
yeah, and so we'll see if UVS Games decides to react to this with the upcoming ban list in not 1 week. It's a week from Tuesday, so they have some time to get together and meet on it and maybe do some testing games. It's definitely a weird situation because it's difficult to pinpoint particular key cogs of this, where there's a number of really good backup themed cards, obviously, including different ones that people use as their win conditions. And so you could imagine them deciding that anything from 9 Titans to Rock Barrage to Falling Titans to Unyielding, or even something else, even they could go after the scalers that all say all the stuff that says plus X or minus X, where X is your number of backups, for instance.
Right.
Could all be kind of like how they hit Stronger in Darkness to try to take Tokiyami down a little bit. So if they decide to do something, they'll have a lot of options and they'll have to decide exactly what to do. Unyielding is sort of a separate storyline where not only were some of the backup decks using it, not all of them, right? A lot of the Zeeks weren't bothering, but a lot of the Hanjas were, just to keep the screws on people with the damage reduction plan. But you also had, a Mimic deck in Top Cuts using Unyielding Destruction. You had a Godzilla deck in Top Cuts using Unyielding Destruction. And certainly the, setting people back to 4 multiple times a game was definitely a major feature of the event.
Yeah, that one might have gotten a bit overtuned as just that 4 is close enough to half function that you're not winning too many games. But I mean, it sure was awfully close to not killing me. Zach hit me with it, and he was kind of paying the price of playing crappy 2-speed mids. I was a lot more alive in those games than I could have been if he had just drawn determined advance in those slots, right?
Right.
Yeah, and they're trying to strike a balance. I think they want to have a board reset that's not going to only live in sideboards, right? They clearly want to have it in the format as a thing that exists. And I think just the way that asset or backup theme decks, or even a character with a lot of check bonuses like a Godzilla or an Annie, can make this sort of one-sided. It's just, if this was printed before all these backup decks existed, it would have been less of a big deal, I think. Give or take Mimic still being around. But in tandem with backup decks are also already really good even without this. It's just a lot of power to be giving them and to be having in the format. But on the flip side, they're probably relatively happy that the top cuts wasn't a whole pile of do nothing Ghidorahs and Dekus and whatnot. And there were some of those decks, and there were certainly more down in the top 32. But in that sense, it kind of accomplished its goal, but also it just creates a lot of one-sided situations.
Yeah, honestly, like I was startled by the diversity of this top 16. Well, again, how much of it, I remember you pointed out that the Ghidorah deck is awfully close to a net. I mean, it's functionally a net deck of functionally a copy of the top cut or the winning deck from the last regional, which was in a previous format, and obviously transferred well enough into the new one. But just like all the same fundamentals are in play, right? The virtual flashes or the ceiling attacks, the three heads, and the big pile of attacks that I take out of my decks because I'm afraid of getting them hit by sweeping daggers.
I would say the amount of courage Hunter has playing all those cards that are weak to sweeping daggers.
That's what True Hundred's for.
No one but me even plays for sweeping daggers. So once you have one target, you might as well have 6 targets in your discard pile. It's not like they're going to be any worse than each other.
Yeah, to Barlow's point, Barlow's asking in chat, do you think the meta is adjustable to? As in, do you think backup decks are still dominant if everyone fully preps for them? I think probably the best ones are the ones with the most robust game plans. I think if you have backup deck that's literally only winning on Falling Titans and has no plan B, that's probably not so good. But the ones that and most of them aren't, right? A lot of them are like, well, I can either do it with this or I can do it with Harness on Death. I know Justin was Falling Titans or Throw You to Death. He was my Lost in Swiss. I made him throw me to death. I can at least take pride in that. He didn't get the Falling Titans me out of the game, but and I think Wub's deck was we can do Falling Titans or a Harness on Death line or just like my deck has 20 attacks, we'll figure it out kind of angle. And so you have a bunch of different mixed approaches, and maybe some people are saying that Beast Titans Rock Barrage is maybe like the linchpin of all of these, where you can kind of chip down the power level of all these decks by taking out the role player that's just doing a lot of work. I think that one's probably present in pretty much all of these lists. I would think. I haven't checked them. I imagine they're all on 3 or 4 Rock Barrage as sort of a key cog. But yeah, I think certain backup decks that people were able to get away with this weekend, they probably couldn't, but other ones I think would still be very good.
Sure. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think there was some interesting discussion of, for instance, is Jaeger's Follower better than a typical spam foundation?
Right.
On the balance, right? And kind of, I wonder if, what am I thinking? Yeah, I mean, obviously there were only X number of command the founders or actually the coordinate rather. I think there were 0 of the anti-mage backup sweep card.
Yeah.
But like these cards could show up and do a lot of work. There were awful lot of 10x Jaegerist decks that were then playing extra support, and we've seen a little bit of like backup Deku, backup Jester that Tam has been running a lot of with lots of Jaegerists, and it could just be that they kind of undertuned those balance cards and the spectrum of attacks that are like the ready shots of the world, the signal shot that I was talking about, the tavern brawls that are just these good value attacks that can eat those up and get a momentum and do all the stuff that we've been paranoid that if I play a backup deck, I'm just going to get punished by my opponent's insane value plays. I don't think we saw a lot of people playing that kind of universes this weekend for whatever reasons, and like I want to believe that there is an answer to this, but I certainly don't know for certain that there is.
Yeah, I think maybe maybe it comes full circle to the value decks get slapped around by unyielding destruction, right? And
true, yeah.
It just there's just a lot of prongs to the situation going on.
Swift Execution, yeah, what a card that is. I remember I watched some of the top 8s with Barlow beating it with like Jean and Sasha too. Like Sasha, Swift Execution's an air tune, isn't it? So wouldn't have been in Sasha, but like the anti backup cards go pretty high on the chart of nasty punishers, right? If this hex a backup, it immediately goes to when you draw a card, like that's cracked.
Yeah, and it was a good sort of topic to talk about just broadly, since it's even if they hit a piece of these lists, they're still going to be good, right? I don't think
hope,
these backup theme decks are going away anytime soon. When do you attack a backup? Right? When is as a philosophical question, because maybe a lot of people showed up and just never played against these backup decks before, right? And they're like I don't know how I'm supposed to interact with these things.
As a broad heuristic, frequently you probably should attack backups. If you can build a deck that can just have an engine and turn over its resources and get value from playing the game, Earthbreaker hitting a backup is awesome. Signal Shot hitting a backup is awesome. On-hit triggers into backups, attacks that have valuable enhances, foundations and assets and characters that pay you back for playing just for entering an enhanced step. Getting into an enhanced step against a backup is awesome. And in a real sense, like the backups themselves are tuned around the fact that like the Nine Titans can get attacked by equally like four difficulty attacks and trade badly into that. And so you have to choose between, do you keep it alive? The footsie game of spending damage reduction, I think, is really fascinating into backups, and you just have to engage with that with your opponent. If you can play cards that, Murderous Escalation is a card that I checked one person was playing this tournament, because one of the beautiful things about having these in Ultra is that we can do the search for decks with card and sort by recently modified and see what the Metaversus account had updated in it. Cards shaped like that, like Knots Flask. There's other Murderous Escalation lightsaber after you get a speed pump plus 3 damage kind of stuff. When Hanji's showing up playing Pull from Danger, flip -3 damage. When Hanji's showing up playing Titans Under Orders, you can trade with those just by putting 2 Diff Foundations in your deck. And I mean, I guess maybe then you have to sacrifice to Unyielding Destruction, you get blown out that way.
It's
but
it's definitely like to your point. Like I could imagine a world where they hit like exactly Unyielding, and maybe if they're really mad at like Deku or whatever, they touch some of those dirtily decks or something, and just say we'll just see if people adjust the backups if Unyielding's not putting them in a chokehold, right? Will, did you face any backup decks in your run? Did you get a chance to attack them or leave them alone?
The only one I played against was Maxwell's Zeke 1. And before he swapped over to Hanji in the sideboard, I did not bother attacking a single backup because I'm on Porco, I'm super aggro, I don't
face.
care. Yeah, I just murders face game 1, and then swapping over to Hanji. The only things that he played I really ever wanted to hit was 9 Titans, which I can't attack anyway. So that's what led me to losing that match, because he just had all the DR on the field. The only one I'd ever want to hit might be Hitch.
I was just thinking about Hitch. And
yeah.
Actually, I don't know. I played one match against Hitch, or against Hanji rather, and the way it shook out was that I had a somewhat incredible line for I guess I overkilled by 3 or something.
Right.
But I started my turn with an Earthbreaker and sent it at Hitch, and then we had a skirmish over trying to get enough damage on it. He tapped all of his Titans Under Orders on it, and then he blocked my second Earthbreaker. I played 2 Falling Heel Strikes, and through a series of game actions, including unflipping, pushing the limits.
Mm-hmm.
Is it push the limits? I keep forgetting. I know that the pony one that flips after you clear pool is push the advantage, I think. And
push
then
something. Yeah, I know what you're talking
about. Yeah. Anyway, the participation promo from last nationals, after second foundation draw card, unflipping that with 2 falling heel strikes, and those those unflips generating Earthbreaker triggers and finding just over lethal damage. Yes, chat auto filtered a comment from a Universus game employee over there. Good stuff.
I didn't do that one.
Yeah,
one of the other twos allowed that one.
So he fought over me to protect his Hitch, to keep his Hitch on board, and I managed to take a trick over him and still knock her down with peak enhances and whatever. And then I managed to go for his turn, and he said after the match, like, oh, in retrospect, if I just let Hitch die, contest the Earthbreaker, he could have had a bunch more effective life that turn. And kind of the struggle of these backup decks is that if you are strong enough to put them in difficult spots, it is generally very difficult to play them perfectly, to have that foresight, have that that idea of how you need to spend your scarce agency in the game, where your opponent's going to just choose what they attack and where to put pressure on you. You have to think ahead of, well, is my life total really in threat now? How am I playing for the long game? All these trade offs. But it's just that because the decks are so powerful, because they are upfront about it. I think a lot of people aren't actually putting them under enough pressure that they might be folding.
Yeah, I think my interest was like many questions in this game about in-game strategy. It depends, TM.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
If obviously if you have a chance to plow through whatever they're doing and kill your opponent, then you don't bother attacking their backups. If you know that this is a non-lethal kill turn and you can pick off some backups, without putting in too much effort, and you're not worried about your ability to get their life total down later, right, which is important, then yeah, go ahead and pick off some backups, right, especially if you have uses for momentum and whatnot. If you can attack a backup and not kill it, but maybe they burn some damage reduction stuff that's a limited resource as opposed to, the ones that just turn sideways to every single turn minus X something, then maybe it's worth doing just to, take some counters away. And there's all these different facets. If you have an on hit and you're not sure if you can land it against them, then you can just point it at a backup. Something I do with Mikasa's Fatal Cleave a lot, right? Just like, okay, well, I don't think you're really holding a low block, but we're setting this at a backup anyway, right? Kind of stuff. And Earthbreaker's been mentioned a couple of times. And it also, if it depends on the nature of the deck you're facing too, right? How much, if they're playing a bunch of Jaegerists, then they probably have some theming where they really, really want to get to like a critical mass of 8 backups in their stage, maybe, right? Or maybe they're just a Zeke that just wants to have them dead or alive, it doesn't matter, right? Or, if they're really deep on Falling Titans and they really care about having them in their stage versus if they're really deep on Harness Undeath and they don't care if they're in the stage or not, you have to sort of evaluate how much picking off those backups is actually going to matter to them too. Because some backup decks just want them in the bin, in the stage, it doesn't matter, just be there somewhere, or the difference between having, 2 versus 4 versus 6 isn't too important as long as they have their 9 Titans, as long as they can get to 3 for their Rock Barrage or whatever.
Yeah, I think one thing to talk about is that when you're playing against something like Wub's deck, if you play against someone playing Wub's deck, there is an element of these, kind of Falling Titans centric offense that letting them have a million backups in play can be immediately lead to your demise, but they kind of are just playing for the long game in the first place, and that card does just shift to the stage and then turn into an attack that draws itself again later, or turns into a foundation that draws its add to hand at a later date. And I definitely found the subgame playing against that deck of keeping my life total high enough that he would have to extend himself, he would have to stretch to threaten the win, versus he might have to high, let me play kind of paradoxically, like I was playing recklessly, or like buying myself the permission to play recklessly by playing tight defense and not letting my life total go down at all. And that was an interesting push and pull dynamic in that matchup.
Yeah, sometimes your life total is resource, and sometimes, I guess this is a side tangent, but this is something I think we talked about randomly at a local a couple weeks ago. When people say life total is a resource in this game, that's not as true as it is in some other card games. Because if there's this idea of range in this game, which is how much life can they take away from me if they full send and go all in? Like, how much do they know they can get from me? How much do they think they can get from me at different odds? And so it's not that only the last point of health matters, because if you're at 1, most half decent hands, if they full send everything, is going to find a way to deal 1 damage. Right? So the difference between being at 10 health versus 1 health is much more significant than it is in a game where maybe there's units that have a summoning sickness type of effect on them, or there's some time delay, or you know with a lot of certainty exactly what their range is going to be.
Right.
Yeah, in Magic, if you're playing blue-white control and you have Wrath of God, and you're playing against a mono green deck, you know that you can go to one life, wrath them, and then have time to deal with anything they might put on the table. But there's never an analogous situation in universe. You can never be at one life and say, no, I'm locked up, I'm completely secure. Short of this happens occasionally if you're playing like a Rodan deck with all this
Right.
infinite speed redux or whatever, but it is a huge playing that complete lockout goal line defense for your last one health total. I think the American football analogy we talked about, I think way in the
Yeah.
past,
Yeah.
is actually really really phenomenal for this. If you're at the 50-yard line, you're allowed to play the game much more liberally than you are at the goal line.
Right. Yeah, and so depending on your matchup, the life total that is important is going to change. If you're facing a Falling Titans deck and you know that that's their plan A, then maybe there's not too much of a difference between 24 health and 19 health, because that's still 4 Falling Titans either way, right? or something like that. Or you can sort of do some math on like how crazy does their string need to be to count to 30. For instance, can you lose, and you go down to 20 safely and still, they're a Rodan or something with a very meager offense, and you don't have to worry too much about them 20ing you without a really hot draw, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love how much. I think we've entered probably a age with more damage footsie than I've seen in an awful long time, right? I mean, probably, actually, easily ever. I think like the damage reduction power level got pushed up enough that it's not like. I remember there were like these old Clark decks that were just like, I'm going to play every card that says E commit -2, and there were plenty of decks that kind of just got shut out of the game by that. In combination with the effectively the response on Hood, if you recall him from
Yeah.
if chat remembers that guy, but this puts certainly with like Peak. I was playing so many games of okay, this tech could be up to 10 or 12 damage or whatever, and we're really gonna have a dialogue over is it going to be 4 or is it going to be 8 or is it going to be am I going to full send it and expend a bunch of resources to make it as big as I can? Then are you going to block it or not? Is it worth it? Is it worth my time if I'm going to pump up all this damage? What's the zone Yomi look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we call it Peak Universus, right? Because Peak is just by nature going to be playing games where you're making a lot of resource trade-off decisions, and you're going to be attacking and you're going to be blocking and you're going to be doing some footsies and some back and forth,
Right.
and sort of playing the game. I like to say it's playing the game the way the game engine imagines it, right? Like if you were just to read an overview of the basic game rules and think about how games probably play out, that's how Peak plays Universes, right? Whereas a Deku or a full send turn 2 aggro deck or a damage reduction, really heavy damage reduction spamming deck is not necessarily playing the game the way the starter rule sheet imagines it's going to get played.
Yeah, Hanji saying, "Here's my rock throw into build triple Grishas into Titan Pile, Titan Pile, Titan Pile with double damage on 2 of them. Maybe a little bit less as Garfield intended, as
Yeah.
they say."
I don't know what Games Workshop intended. Those cards were wild.
I was say they have a foundation that was commit and spend momentum to give your check +1. Like the game they intended was very different from what the game ended up being.
Yeah, we've come a long way. They didn't. We had to invent -2 speed and then invent return to printed speed, and these were
the platonic Games Workshop.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't know, like, the idea of committing a resource for speed reduction was not there at the start of the game.
Right.
It's like a novel concept that mostly came out with Red Horizon. There were like a couple cards that did it in 2009 or something, I think.
actually shout out to this is something I know. Like Wub had talked to me about his Zeke deck off and on. We played in a side event in Albuquerque, and talked about it online a little bit. And it took me him repeating this idea like 3 times in his deck video and on the Where's Wub podcast that just like Zeke is good at blocking.
Yeah.
Before I actually internalized the belief that Zeke is good at blocking. And that the Jaegerists are in fact a minus speed option that really kind of adds up if you have 4 of them in play. That's actually quite a bit of minus speed, and like slugging them is much more likely to get anything out of it than even if he's going to sack it and draw a card and gain a health. that might still be a better use of your attack than trying to just send it to space and hope that it lands.
Yeah, I think with that Zeke in particular, the decision of whether to attack backups feels really weird because you're no longer going to get the momentum or the on hit out of the deal. You're just like, oh, it's a waste of time because he's going to sack the thing, but I don't know, maybe you want him to sack the thing, right? There's going to be cases.
Yeah, it's a really unique matchup. Like it's we have Pink Universus and we have different universes, and that was a very different flavor. All right, do we have anything else we want to? Are there any other dimensions to examine Pink Universes from that we want to talk about? I think that's the.
Yeah, I think that's probably enough talk about backups. Anything else you wanted to talk about in terms of like what showed up in the top 16? I know you have some comments about Earthbreaker.
Yeah, shout out to Earthbreaker. I kind of hyperbolically optimistic about that one. Like I think there were actually 4 decks split over the 2 in the top 2 land in the top 16, 2 land in the top 8, and I just happened to be playing an Earthbreaker mirror in my matchup. Turns out it wasn't actually that much the rest of the field. The rest of the field was kind of trending, well, more normal, I guess, more backup-y. And certainly at the very top was an awful lot of these. The 2 War Chiefs rose to the top. But it was quite a good weekend for Earthbreaker. We like conditionally drawing cards, conditionally dealing damage, conditionally sacrificing foundations, stunning.
Yeah, card has a lot of text on it.
It sure does. And I saw a little bit of folks playing like Earthbreaker Ryu in teams, and definitely a bright future for that one.
Yeah,
Earthbreaker is one of those cards where I'm like, I know it has a ton of symbols. I always forget which ones they are. Like I was looking at it and saw it had water. I was like, this card has water on it. What?
I believe I know all Earth and Water. Is the other one Death? I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
All Death, Earth, Water. It's the one in
Death, Earth, Water.
It's the one and only card Yu-Hoja will ever get printed again.
Pretty much.
It's just like browsing through the 17 through 32. Shoutouts to Keenan Meadows, who played Bertolt 2 post errata to a top 32 finish. That was kind of wild to see jump out at the top 32.
Yeah, I want to see what his matchups were actually, because at some instant zoom out level, right? Like here's a character who really loves enhanced steps. He can punch backups. He's playing Mega Cantrip.
Well, he's the one that asked me when should we attack backups. Actually, he suggested the topic. He's like, I don't know what to do.
Banger. Oh, actually, he played 2 Rodans. He played Reiner Warrior. He won a win and in, or well, I said win and into top 32 against Godzilla.
Yeah,
lost round 1 to Pony, and
yeah, losses. River and Ryan Kogod are not shameful people to lose to for sure. Keenan Meadows is of course a very, very good player.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not a particularly terrible run for the Bertolt 2 list. And thanks again Metaversus for making that information available.
Right.
Very cool to just be able to bring something up like that. The rest of the 32, honestly, I was expecting, because this is usually the case, I was expecting more like surprise interesting stuff in the 17 to 32, but it was kind of just more backup decks and the Rodans and Ghidorahs that were in there instead of in Top Cuts.
Yeah, like it was this was much more of a Godzilla forward tournament than I expected. All the 3 Ghidorahs in the top 32, the many Godzillas, obviously. And
yeah, go back to Jacob Johnson had a Amajiki sitting at 35th. Did a Grog at 37th.
I think I played against one at X and 1 in like round 4 or 5.
We had a George Zhang on Night Eye at 43rd.
Yeah, he like started 1-3 and then just trolled the X3 bracket the whole way through or something like that. That was pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, Night Eye is a good home for Earthbreaker and Fatal Cleave, right? You just get an enhanced steps, you get some value out of it by filling up their RFG pile, and you can both win a long game for free by decking them. Kind of for free is kind of question marks because they're eventually going to draw a 5-hit string, and that'll be kind of scary before you finish them off. But probably the best home for the cycle lock stuff, right? It's got to be.
Yeah. I actually got to activate Fatal Cleave Cycle Lock, which means I needed to reread it to know what it does. I thought it destroyed 2 foundations. I'm like, hit those 2. They're like, that's not what it does. I'm like, oh, wait, what does it do anyway?
It is
It
despicable,
destroys
but it's
two,
not that
but
despicable.
on different abilities.
Yeah. It's one now from their stage, and they discard a card,
Yes.
which is very helpful.
And
Their
then
hand
one
was
on hit.
empty, but
Yeah.
Yo, it's a 4x imprisoned deck. 4x imprisoned, 4x refreshing slice. I'm gonna pop off. Amazing.
George's Night Eye list.
Oh yeah, he gets playing World's Weakest Hunter. Yeah, when to attack a backup when you have World's Weakest Hunter in your hand.
That's true.
Holy.
Yes,
Very
that,
true.
that is a good time to attack a backup.
Especially if you can put some damage on it, which this deck cannot. And that's sad.
All right, I think it's pretty good to call it a wrap for today. Unless anybody has anything else exciting they want to talk about, definitely everyone check out that Metaversus link for more peeking at deck lists and all the different things they were doing and all the matchups they had and all that. Any sort of channel plugs we want to do? We'll go first.
I mean, just our YouTube channel, 4Checks Cast on YouTube. We got a few of the backlog uploaded today. I noticed it in my subscriptions. Hopefully, we should be caught up.
Yeah, Justin said we were caught up earlier, so hopefully that is true.
Yeah, we don't have last week's, but that's fine.
Well, we didn't have a show last week because we were in Louisville.
You're sorry, I meant
2 weeks ago.
What is this? Yeah, I meant episode 14, whatever that was. Also, either we're missing a couple. It looks like we're missing one actually, from what it looks like, because we go from 9 to episode 10. It just doesn't have 10 in the title. Then episode 11, and then straight to episode 13. So either
unless
he
we're
has
just
his
bad at
numbers-
numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, he could just be bad at numbers.
Yeah,
Listen, we're
Good.
I was gonna say we're the 4Checks Cast. We can count to 4.
Yeah,
After that.
After that it gets real rough. Yeah, the shoutouts to Response on Play. They posted a pretty funny TikTok that kind of went viral. So hopefully that ends up getting more eyes in the game and more eyes on them. They do a lot of content. They're doing a lot of interviews and stuff like that on YouTube. Kevin, you got anything going on your channel?
I've got some dreams about Pink Universus that will come to fruition in the future. So watch that space. Go subscribe now, and you'll be notified. Hit the bell so you'll be notified when it drops.
Yeah, and then for my personal channel, Satonis on YouTube, I posted last week I'm gonna try to do some budget videos, not highlighting budget decks, but just sort of cards that budget players should pay attention to and maybe go after. That aren't the $20 secret rares or anything like that, just like the cool commons and uncommons that can put in some work and that can make your deck better than just whatever you've built out of the one box that you've opened. But you can still go back, even if you don't mean to spend a lot of money in old sets. You can spend $10 and really make your deck better on a budget basis. And I'm gonna keep doing those, even if they're not great for immediate views. I just kind of want them to exist. So I'm working on doing one on challenger decks next, what the best challenger decks or other pre-constructed decks for budget players to pick up. So please look forward to that. Check out that channel if you're interested. Share those videos, with your newer local friends. And that'll do it for this week's episode of the 4Checks Cast. Is raiding a thing? Do we have someone we can raid?
There's no one live that I follow for UVS content at least.
Okay, so raiding will not be a thing. All right, that sounds good.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you, I guess, in a couple
In
weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, post ban list. We'll have ban list reactions or non-reactions if they do absolutely nothing, and maybe talk about all the board games we played at Gen Con.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was about to say we can definitely hear about Tim and Justin's experience at Gen Con.
Just like take my whole luggage and put it. It won't fit in my camera. All right, take care. Good night, everybody.